Howdy, hey people, my name's T.S. and I write comics. And I am live talking about my new comic book, Hellion and Bash Issue number 2, as well as anything else you want to know about comic books, publishing your own comics, writing comics, anything like that. I write comics like Hellion and Bash, Tokyo Fire, Growing Up, and a bunch of other ones that are coming out soon from all sorts of different places, like The Digger over at Invader Comics, and lots of other books. So if you have questions about making comics or anything like that, please feel free to ask. Or if you just want to talk about comics in general, keep me company while I wait for my lunch to get here. Let's do it. And I hope everybody else is having an awesome day. I am getting ready to go to Great Lakes Comic Con. I'm going to be walking around there tomorrow. If you see me, say hi. If you know me from here, if you just want to talk about comics, say something. I'm going to be passing out free comics as well. I'm not tabling, so I have nothing to sell. So I'm just going to be giving out copies of Hellion and Bash Issue 1. And if you like it, or if you're excited about comic books, or if you like superhero comics like Invincible, check out Hellion and Bash Issue 2. The link is in the bio. And yeah, I would love if people go over there and support it. But that's okay, even if you can't, stick around. Hang out, let's talk comic books. I hope everyone is doing great today. Cliffy, how you doing, dude? You're normally the last one to join. You're the first one to join today? How you doing? And Cliff, while you're here, why don't you plug your comic book too? You always jump in, you mention that you make comic books, and you never plug. You never go, yeah, this is my comic book. Go check it out. Feel free to shill, man. Yeah, you do, man. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. What are you reading lately? What do you want to talk about? I just got caught up on everything. Something is the children. I love that series. So does my wife, and I try to get everything when it goes to trades for her because she doesn't really read floppies. So I just caught up on that, as all the tie-ins, Book of Cutter, all that stuff. Caught up on all of the Ultimate Universe stuff that's available on the app, the Marvel Unlimited. Same thing with the Absolute stuff. So I'm trying to stay up on comics right now. One of the things when you start writing comic books and you start getting gigs, it becomes really hard to read everything as it's coming out. But I'm trying. I should be asleep. But howdy, my friend. Dandy! Well, thank you for not sleeping. Come be an insomniac with me. I appreciate the company. I don't really read many. That's crazy, Cliff. You gotta have input to have output. What inspired you to get into making comic books if you don't really read comics? Or did you used to read comics and then you stopped when you started making them? Because if anything, when I started writing comics and starting to become more professional about it and started making money and publishing them, I just doubled down. I read 10 times more than I ever did before I started creating. Partly for research, partly it's because it helps me come up with ideas and helps me stay up to date on the medium, but also because it's my excuse to be able to read more comics. I've always loved them, always loved reading them, and now I can be like, well, this is for work. So, I just double down and read so much more. What I do read a lot more of now, being in the comic sphere, is I read more Marvel and DC stuff. I read so many Image and Boom and Dark Horse and IDW over the years, but now, being in it and hoping to work for some of the larger companies, I try to read everything, and that brought me back to Marvel and DC. I don't want to become overly influenced by what others are doing. If that makes sense. I always disagree with that just a little bit, but like everyone's different. So this is what works for you. What works for you. For me, sure I'll be influenced, but everyone's influenced by something. But you gotta, in my opinion, you gotta know what is happening in comics. You gotta see the trends, and also you don't want to be stale. You don't want to do something that somebody else has done 100 times, and you don't know that unless you're up to date and see how the medium grows. In my opinion, and inspiration comes from everywhere, so I try to bring that in because I also don't want to write a comic that's been written a million times by accident, because that happens too, right? If you don't have all of that input. But that's how Alex from Lucky33 is. Yeah, he has the exact same stance as you, Clivy. And that's why I said, like, it's opinion based, right? It's all subjective. You're not wrong. I'm not right. But that's why I try to, consume as much as I can. I used to have several subscriptions in the 90s. Nice. What were you reading in the 90s? That was when I started reading comics, because that's when I was born. But people talk about Spider-Man a lot in how he's like perpetually young now. And in the 90s, like he was a dad in multiple continuities. And he had clones up the wazoo. And that was like my first experience in ongoing comic books, really. And like they were taking out Superman and all of that stuff. So, growing up in the 90s and having that be my first foray into comic books, I think has really skewed what I thought comic books were going into them. Also, am I too loud? If anyone can let me know if it looks like I'm peaking a little bit on my mic, but I can always turn myself down if it's rough. First new non-Gwar comic I got since then was a compilation of I Hate Fairyland. I love I Hate Fairyland. Scotty Young is one of my favorite comic book creators, just period, hands down. Everything he draws, everything he writes, I'm a gigantic fan. I've learned so much from him, and I love I Hate Fairyland. So if you were to go non-Gwar, which I love that you're a Gwar fan, makes sense too after seeing your comic. You can definitely see the influence. But I Hate Fairyland is an awesome way to go. If you like Scotty Young, have you checked out anything by Kyle Starks? That's another big one for me. And a lot of when it comes to comedy in comics, I think of Scotty Young and Kyle Starks. I have to consume all media at all times to push more unique and unpredictable content. That's kind of how I feel. I just love stories. Any medium that tells stories, I want to be there and see what I like from it. I don't love every single thing from every single medium, but I like stories, and if a good story is being told, I want to be there, and that usually means me seeking out lots of different stories from all sorts of places. The art jumped across the shop and smacked me in the face. Heck, dude, that is how Scotty Young does it, man. That was the thing when I first saw his work. It was way, way back. He had done some X-Men stuff, but then he was doing the Wizard of Oz adaptations at Marvel, and I had never seen anything like it. And like now he works with Jorge Corona, which is another one. The first time I saw Jorge Corona's art, I was like, oh my god, this is the most gorgeous thing I think I've ever laid eyes upon, other than my wife. And I need all of this. And so even though he doesn't draw as many of his books, they're still gorgeous, and they're still popping off the shelf like crazy. Ty, how's it going, dude? I've also tabled at comic convention years before I made one. What were you tabling before you were making comics? What were you selling there? I'm going to my first Comic-Con it's Great Lakes Comic-Con this Saturday, so tomorrow, I guess, because today's Friday. But I couldn't table. I didn't get in soon enough, so I'm just walking around handing out free comic books is basically my plan. But I never had enough comic books to sell until now. Nothing much. Ty, come on. It's Friday. Things got to be popping. You got to have things to do. You got to have events. And, you just want to be like one of those dudes who are just having to talk online because he's got no one else to talk to on a Friday afternoon when he should be working. Although I guess this is work. Go check out my book, Hellion and Bash #2, live on Kickstarter right now. The link is in the bio. There, I worked for a little bit. Is that couple copy? What? What is couple copy? Help me out, I'm too old. I don't know the lingo. I don't do events currently. I just sit at my desk and write. That is mostly what I do. Up until this weekend, I don't. Is that a cup of coffee? Yes, it's a cup of coffee. It's always a cup of coffee. I drink coffee, water, and then in the afternoon sometimes I drink soda, but not often. Mostly prints of paintings and copies of ballpoint pieces, plus taking commissions on original art. That's rad, man. I love seeing that. That's how I've come across a lot of really cool artists. Is just like, yeah, no, I never thought about making comic books. I was doing this art, and I always bother them, asking them if they want to get into comics. But I love seeing that, and I that's one of the few places I see other than like really touristy towns that you can still sell original art just out and about. People are at a lot of comic conventions to get original art, which is rad. Benny, what's going on, dude? I've been working on a thing for Benny this morning, working on a script for him for one of his ideas, and it's been really, really fun. So keep an eye on him when it comes to the comic sphere. He's done everything else. Now he's got to break into comics. Did you see my message on Instagram? I did not. I'm not really on Instagram very often. Usually, if you see something on Instagram, it's a repost from something from TikTok or any other place. Um, Email me is the best way. I see the emails. I don't always get a chance to reply to them right away, but I see emails always, at least. I'm gonna type it into the chat, and you let me know if it gets screened. It's probably gonna get screened. But that's my email. Hit me up on email if you have questions, comments, need anything, just want to chat or whatever. Let me know if that got caught in the filter, basically. Yeti Man lives. He does. You don't know for how long. You got to read issue number 2 to find out. Thank God it's Friday, dude. You're telling me, man. I have so much more work to do. Like, that's part of the problem with working for yourself when you start your own business, is it doesn't stop. And Friday usually just means other people are doing things that you want to be doing, and you have more work to do. You can take as many days off as you want when you're your own boss, but that work doesn't disappear. Like, it just waits for you to get back. So that part always stinks. But I did get a chance to finally see Captain America Brave New World, watch the screener for that. That was a fun time. Got to hang out with my wife a little bit, fully recovered, back to work. Wrote the next issue of Tokyo Fire, which was a lot of fun. Got to approve like 1 million more designs for issue 2 and 3 of Hellion and Bash, which has been a lot of fun. Issue 2 is almost done. It's being lettered right now. So I've been having a good time. I asked if you could still give feedback on the ES comic. Yeah, no, definitely, man. But email me the stuff, and we'll talk about it. Next on the block, because like I said, I got to finish some stuff for Benny, and then I have 2 more paid scripts I have to work on, obviously, because money is involved, and I'm contractually obligated to finish these scripts. But as soon as they're done, I have to consult on a book for Bug Boy. Shout out to Bug Boy. If they pop in here, I have to finish up their consultation stuff that I owe them, and then yeah, I would love to take a look. What kind of feedback are you looking for? Yeah, nothing is there. Okay. So if you go to my or just write this down. It's comics, COMICS, at can'tbekilledcreations.com. That is what it is. Let me see if I can put it up on the live, and that might be the best way to do it. Let's see if I am fancy enough to do that. We're doing this in real time. Or, you can always go to my website. Links in my bio as well. And there's a submission form. That always works, too. But let's see. We can make this happen. And you can't see it because of the way that it goes. Oh, man. Write it on paper and hold it up. Right, exactly. What year are we in? Let's see. I gotta add a background to this so you can see it. Oh man. It's just feedback on my outline of the story arc across issues. Sure, I can give you some feedback on there. Again, I don't know how much help that's going to be. Like we've talked about before, it's all about the execution, right? You can have an awesome story arc, you can have a terrible story arc, but the idea is always going to be just fine, right? It's about what you do once you're actually writing the issue, what the art looks like, how you actually, deliver on it is more important. But I can tell you if I like the idea or not, and check out the story arc. I can definitely help you with that. Also, I had the Venom Limited series, Game LS, and the entire original X-Men 2099. Love the 2099 stuff. Loved Miguel O'Hara, especially like the Spider-Man 2099 stuff, obviously. But I was a big fan of a lot of those what-if universes in the 90s because they were rad, and it was so different compared to like the Saturday morning cartoons, which was mostly what I saw and as my connection to comic books in the 90s as a kid. So like Spider-Girl was a big favorite of mine just because it was so different compared to what I saw. And like you had this grown-up Pete, with a goatee that I always wanted to grow, and a cane, like I loved all the mystery behind it. But I loved all of those what if universe. Ty, let me know if you see that email, but it's comics@can'tbekilledcreations.com, and feel free to hit me up anytime. Send over that stuff. Like I said, it might take a minute because I got to work through a lot of my own books and a lot of the other stuff that I'm contractually obligated to write on. But I will definitely get to it eventually. I never leave anything to sit forever. What about a news cover is Yeti Man in albino Bigfoot Sasquatch? Oh, there's definitely stuff in universe that he got asked about when he first appeared. But Yeti Man was the premier superhero for the Great Lakes region as well as the Canadian stand-in and the Hellion and Bash universe. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff with Yeti Man. I love that dude. I see it. It's written down. Cool. Got it. Email me anytime. I promise I will take a look. Oh man, I love that so much. Yeah, Yeti Man was really, really fun to write and kind of stole the show the first few times I was working on the character. The coolest design that came across the desk when me and Marcus were first working out the first story arc of Hellion and Bash. You could definitely tell he had the most fun writing it. And it's the same thing when I asked for pinups when I was talking to all of my friends about doing art prints when it came to the first issue for the Kickstarter. Everyone said Yeti Man or Pterodactyl. Those were the two things that everyone wanted to draw. And only like a few people could do it. Obviously, I didn't want to do 45 art prints of Yeti Man. And Fish Lee, shout out to at Mr. Fish Comics. Go check out Green Zone. It just got 100% funded. He was the one who was like, please give me Yeti Man, and that's how you get that cool art right there. But also, this is a 2-page Word doc. It's a quick look. I don't mind waiting, though. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me the heads up, too, because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to open that emails, so you have the read set, and then I open it up, and it's 6 pages, and like, oh, God, you're going to think that I hate you because I'm not going to read that right now. But knowing that it's only 2 pages is helpful. I appreciate that. But again, I don't want to. I want to set up expectations. I don't know how much feedback I can really give you if it's just an arc, but I could probably give you some notes. I could probably say this works or this doesn't in general, right? But really, it's all in execution. And also, I will say, if I can give any like general advice, it's great to go in with a plan. It's great to have a story arc in mind if you're going to do multiple issues. Whether it's a miniseries or an ongoing kind of thing. But leave room for it to be explored and changed if the story speaks to you, if it speaks to the artist that you're working with, if the fans really connect with the character or a storyline. Leave room to grow, because that's one of the few things that comic books can do better than other places, especially in the indie sphere, is, you're working chapter by chapter, and that allows you to adjust in a way that a lot of other books don't, right? So leave some room for growth as you write it, because you might get to the end of issue 1 and all of the feedback from your beta readers is saying, hey, listen, this guy, love him. And you're like, I've never mentioned him ever again in the rest of the series. That was part of the fun of getting to work on issue 1 for so long. And then there was a giant gap between issue 1 and now we just did issues 2 through 4 for Hellion and Bash when it comes to writing. Yeti Man's a perfect example. Yeti Man was like a throwaway character when I first mentioned him to Marcus. And now, like, I wouldn't say he's a big player, but he definitely has way more screen time than I ever would have given him originally. So just make sure you leave some room in there for, adjustment as you work out each issue. You know how much time he has lady on his campaign. I promised him a promo, but I've been down bad. I don't know how much is left, but I can bring it up. Give me 1 second. I am a contributor over there, so I can just go and look. It's got 9 days to go, Dandy. 9 days to go, but they just hit. Let me bring that up. There we go. It's got 9 days to go. He's at $3,147 out of a $3,000 goal. 75 backers. But yeah, he's killing it. If you scroll down through it, I love this book. I put together this page with Fish because I'm his editor, and I always help with all of his stuff. But look at that handsome guy right there. So even if you don't read Fish comics, which you should, Mr. Fish comics are awesome, but edited by moi. I didn't get to write anything on this one because he didn't need my help. Green Zone is already awesome and doesn't need any T.S. Luther input other than editing. But please go check that out. I love reading this story. It's like X-Men meets Training Day, and I love working with Fish. He's one of the coolest dudes and the fastest working dude in comics. So definitely go check that out. Let me switch back over. Oh, dear God, no. I literally outlined using bullet points. Left, not lady. I know what you meant. Zooey mama. Oh, dear God. But yeah, no, I also do the same thing, Ty. I do bullet points as loosely as I can. Just general things. Hey, I want this to happen, and then that to happen. And then I fill in from there. But I know some people get really bogged down in the arc, because it's like, oh, this is good or this is bad. And again, it doesn't really matter if it's good or bad on the outline. If you like it, if it's a good general direction heading. I always talk about outlines as being like the general heading. It's not exactly the path that you're going to follow. It's just the spots that you want to make sure you hit on the way. Or at least the planned spots, right? It's the destination, but it's definitely not the journey. And the comic book is the journey, right? It's what people are there for. It's the stuff that they're actually going to go and do and see. So don't stress too much, especially if you're only in the outlining stage. And also, don't take too many opinion to heart when it comes to the outlining stage and looking at story arcs, because not only are we not going to be able to help you very much, but at this point, it's still your story purely, right? You're the arbiter of everything that's going to happen. And I could give you my seal of approval and say, like, yeah, I love that story arc. And then I could hate everything that you do to execute it when it comes to the comic. So just take all of that with a grain of salt. Also, if you outline with like bullet points, if that's how you do story arc stuff, have you ever considered doing the writer's room corkboard stuff? Because that's kind of how I leveled up my my outlining process. Is I do a quick outline, and then I do the post-it cards. Basically, I do these up on my board, and that's how I work out each scene. I'm on HD. I only need enough of an outline to know what scenes are what. Yep, exactly. 1 point per scene. That's exactly what I do. The arbiter. Work. I miss Halo. It's a thing that's come up. Me and my buddies now are pretty active playing Marvel Rivals on a normal basis. And the thing that we always go back to is like, hey, you remember playing Halo 2, 3, ongoing, like all the time. It's cool to be back to that with something like Marvel Rivals or like Fortnite or whatever, but I do still sometimes miss Halo. Oh, scene cards. I've done those for novels before. Yeah, it really helps me when I have a bunch of really good scenes and I'm not 100% sold on the order that it's going in. And sometimes it just helps me go, you know what, this does need to be earlier or later. I only ever really use them if I am struggling a little bit to finish an issue. It usually isn't always part of my process because I mean, I can write pretty quickly without it. But sometimes it does really speed up the process. Sometimes what'll take me a month I can do in a week because of the cards, and sometimes what I can do in a week I do in like 2 or 3 days because of the cards. So it's quite helpful. I wish they dropped a good Halo game again. I didn't hate Halo Infinite. I liked a lot of parts of it. I just don't think that it was fully what I was looking for at the time, especially when it came to like the multiplayer. And you know, the Master Chief Collection, still rad, still works, still really fun time to jump into. Not as many people are playing it all the time, so you have long waits whenever you do. But every few months, I jump in for a little while. But usually I don't have time to game the same way, so I'll do giant marathons of whatever JRPG that I'm playing. Right now it's Metaphor ReFantazio. Freaking love that game. Love all the Persona games and everything from those studios, but Metaphor has been my big one that I'll like binge if I get a day. Like when I was sick, played a lot of Metaphor, and then if I have, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, like those small chunks, I play Marvel Rivals. Yeah, the cards are awesome. Helps move stuff around. Exactly, that's the thing. And also sometimes, especially if you're, it sounds like you're just as spicy in the brain as I am. Sometimes it just helps to write it down really quickly. Like I will remember that scene, but I just need it written down just in case it's one of the few things that slips away. So it's like, well, I have this quick little scene I wrote down. That's what that means. I can connect it with that card, and I know everything that I want to have in there. Plus, what I do a lot is I use it for client work. So, like, I did a script for Lucky 33 Comics, for example. You know, we mentioned Alex earlier. And because I wasn't playing in my own world, I had a lot of questions about their lore and stuff that they needed to answer. And I know that they're very loosey-goosey with some things. Their lore is not one of them. They are very specific and intentional with the things that have happened in their timeline of that universe. So, I would have, like, questions in purple on a note card. So, like, in this scene, I want to mention... like there was a college that was mentioned. I want to make sure that that college is correct in universe. So I wrote down, hey, ask Alex about the college that would be in this scene. So it helps me for client work a lot. I would show you the board right now, but I have a bunch of stuff that I don't want to spoil for Benny Rose's comic book. I heard Master Chief Collection is dropping on PSN. That will be the day. I'm a big PlayStation player. I never bought the Xbox Series. I mostly played Xbox way back in the like 360, Xbox One. But I play my PS5, you know, at least once a day. And the second it drops, I will be there, Dandy, and we will have to game. It'll be a good time. Very neurospicy. Listen, who in comic books isn't, right? Like, you know, even if you're not like fully diagnosed and stuff, like we're at least interesting. If you're making comic books, I feel like that's usually how it goes. Lucky 33 for the win. Always love those dudes. Had a blast writing that. I had kind of, and I know you're on a lot of the same Discords as me, Danny, but I had kind of started to develop a little bit of a reputation because a lot of my scripts, while having lightheartedness in it, they usually have some dark turns or a little bit somber. Like, my stuff is going to try to make you cry often. And, I had reached out to them and I was like, I really want to write something for you, mostly because it's just fun, right? Like pure fun. Like one of the rules in the universe is no one stays dead, right? So you don't have to worry about all of the characters dying. And my daughter is a gigantic fan of Lucky 33 comics, and she can't read a lot of my stuff or doesn't want to, right? And I was like, please let me write something for you. So I had pitched them on a story. They had one that they kind of needed a writer for that they had some ideas on, and so I had pitched them this book. And but they were a little bit like hesitant. They were like, are you sure that you could write something like this, because we just have fun here? And I'm like, oh please, I can, let me, like, you know, stretch a little bit, let me show my chops, I can just have fun. So it was a really good time getting to write with them. And I highly recommend Lucky 33 Comics. They're not kickstarting anything right now, but the second that they do, I think their next one is Reanimania, which is going to be kind of like a Castlevania send-up comic, which is going to be really, really awesome. And then New Luminaries issue 4. So go check out their stuff. I love it. And bother them about publishing The Face, which is the script that I wrote for them. I think all writers are, at least in the indie space, right? That seems to be the way that they go. The cool thing, I've had some like pros like not show interest in wanting to talk to me about stuff because I'm a smaller guy, and I never take offense to anything like that. But the cool thing is most of the pros that I've gotten a chance to talk to are always super supportive and super on the same wavelength, right? Like we can talk about the same things, we talk the same way, and usually it's like we just start to bond over which books that we like and which stuff that we're making, and they're just as nerdy as you and me. And it's one of the reasons why I never get salty that there's not as much churn in comic books anymore. Number one, I love that the creators that I love get to have a job for much longer than they ever used to in comics, right? It doesn't nearly spit them up or spit them out like it used to, right? It used to be really hard to stay in comics, especially when I was really little and before. But now it's like you can kind of stay in comics forever if you're doing a good job of it and if you like doing it. And because and I know, and most people do, there's not a lot of money in comic books. If you're making comic books, the vast majority of the people that are making them, they love comic books. So I know that the people that get to stay in comic books love them. So even if there's not always a chance for me to get a spot at some larger publisher, it's not like it's going to someone who does it just for the money and hates it and doesn't like working on comic books. Almost everybody who works in comic books loves them. And so it makes me feel a lot better about it. And we're all on that same wavelength, which is really cool. Yeah, I do love that. Not gonna lie, my writing goal is just aura farming as often as possible. Well, I mean, you come to the right place. I try to stay as positive as possible. I would love to say ride my coattails, but they're not going to take you very far, Dandy. Or if Cliff, you're showing your age, man. You can't ask those questions. You go Google it silently like the rest of the other old guys so they know that we're hip. Or so they don't know that we're not hip, man. Dandy, are you a lot younger than me? Can I ask that? Like, I'm 32. Are you at least close to that? Or, and I also grew up in northern Michigan, which adds like another 20 years because we didn't get to the internet until like 2010. Yep, 25. I figured. I'm like, we're coming on a pretty big gap, but, trauma has aged me. That's exactly how it goes, right? I like to tell people, like, I'm 32, but my knees are 50. She's on the youngest here. Yeah, of course you are, man. We're all old dudes. And it's one of the things, I just wrote a graphic novel that I'm working on selling right now. And a large portion of it is just, it's that fear that I got into this too late. That I changed careers too late in the game. Because, I'm in my 30s now. So many people that get discovered in comics are so much younger than me. And then I start listening to a lot of pros that I look up to, and I find out just how late in life they also started, right? And that everyone's journey starts at different points. No one's is the same, so that it is never too late. But that's a big fear for me as I work on stuff, is that I am too old. I'm too old to be on the internet. I'm too old to be making comic books. It's too late for me to be switching, because I had a desk job. I was a corporate jockey for 15 years going on. I was a technical writer for automotive companies. I wrote about car parts all day. And then when I wasn't writing about car parts, I was programming pages about car parts. Like that was my whole thing, is I coded and wrote in Excel sheets and a bunch of other boring stuff. I was one of those dudes who were in meetings to discuss meetings that we were going to try to schedule to make sure we had enough meetings on the agenda. I was a corporate suit, and I always worry that I was that for too long before I jumped full force, both feet in for comic books. I'm 22, almost 23. I'm glad that you're doing it now, though, man. For me, I think there is a little bit of, I couldn't have done this when I was 22 or 23. I don't think I wanted it bad enough. I think I still had so much growing to do and learning, and I don't think I had enough responsibility to do what I need to do, is what I see what I need to do in comic books now, like to be even somewhat successful. I don't think I could have did it at your age, so props to you, man. I was raised by older media, literally no parents, so I'm like in my 30s. Yeah, I feel you, man. Same way. And especially growing up where I did, not only was it older media and I had older parents, it was just like that. A lot of that stuff wasn't available. Like I said, I didn't even have access to the internet until like 2010s, right? So it's just one of those things where you get used to that older mentality, that old soul crap. I don't necessarily believe in that. But I was definitely growing up a little bit faster than I wanted to at that point, and I think that was a large part of my 20s was trying to steal that time back. So I don't think I was mature enough to do something like this. I'm 47. My knees are 90. Exactly, Cliff. You get it, dude. It's so rough. It was. I was talking to my kids the other day about like how they're lucky that I'm a cool dad, right? I'm a younger dad. I started having kids when I was like 22, 23. I was right around Ty's age, and I was telling them like how lucky they are because like my dad was almost 40 when he had me. And they were like, "Dad, you're old." And I was like, "I'm not that old. Look it." And they started pointing out all my gray hair because I wasn't wearing my hat. And man, God, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, "Oh God." At least I still have my hair. I don't know for how much longer, but I'm gonna cherish it while I still have it. But I'm sure my days are numbered when it comes to it. I imagine you were writing about car parts, how Sam Elliott does Dodge Ram commercials. No, but so shout out to Mike Perkins. Love that dude. Editor in chief and owner and operator of Invader comic books. Love that dude. Big hero of mine when it comes to comic books. Gave me my first shot when it came to publishing stuff, and he was doing actual marketing for companies like that. So like he was doing those commercials like that. I tried so hard to get into any marketing department for so long, and the best I could do as I worked my way up the corporate ladder was writing like this brake needs to be applied with this much pressure at this mile an hour, and some of those lines end up on like Amazon, right? One of my my favorite things I ever wrote was there was stuff that would like explode sometimes, right? Like that's a thing that happens with automotive parts, but you can't say explode. So like working with legal to come up with thermal events was one of the lines that I got on like Amazon pages because we couldn't say it would explode, but we had to tell people that it would explode. So you say thermal event. Uh, but I never got the chance to actually do any commercials or anything. I did have a really small company in the 2010s, right around there. Maybe it was closer to 20 like 16, and we did local commercials. And I did get to write copy for that, obviously, because I was the one making the commercials. Never got to write anything for cars. Did a lot of restaurants though, that are somewhere lurking in like the back pages of YouTube that people could probably hunt down. I had my first when I was 22, my seventh when I was 42. That's crazy, man. Weren't you saying you have like 9 kids, Cliff? How do you have time to talk to me? Like, how do you have money for anything? I have 2, and I'm like, oh God, I had too many kids. They're so expensive. I love them to death, and like, I give them all the stuff that I would otherwise have, and that's why it's so easy for me to just make comic books and not spend money on anything else, because I just give it to them. But how do you have that many kids? How is that possible? 7. See, exactly, Ty. That's exactly what I'm saying. He's a regular Abraham over there, father of many. Repeat from the other live. Do you not have TV? Involuntary child labor. After the 3rd, they don't get more difficult, just more expensive. Exactly. Well, listen, my kids aren't difficult at all. I have the coolest kids on the planet. They're little nerdy indoor kids. We read comic books together and watch TV and play video games, and they're prolific readers. My daughter, I have to when I go to yell at my kids to go to bed, like when I have to reprimand them, it's my daughter going, "Please, Dad, can I just read one more graphic novel?" Like I have the coolest kids ever. They get straight A's at school. They don't start any crap, and they're funny, right? So easy, definitely. Expensive, for sure. That's the thing. Every kid's expensive, right? You gotta keep them warm, you gotta feed them. And eventually they have interests, and you gotta support those. They joined a Lego club, so it's I gotta buy Legos. Legos are expensive, but I want them to do that. My daughter's getting into coding, so it's okay, coding camp stuff and buying them software. It starts to add up. And my son loves Pokemon, and we all know that there's not much merch for Pokemon, One more chapter, Dad. Dude, it is like that. It's so cute. And, like, I have to be stern, right? I have to be like, no, go to bed. But in my heart, I'm like, read as much as you want, man. You know how many times I've gotten in trouble, like, as a parent? Like, I know, I'm like, I need to be telling them to go to bed early. But she's reading Spider-Man. I want to let her read Spider-Man. I want to talk to her about Spider-Man the next day. Like, one that she's really into right now is Strange Academy. None of my friends really read Strange Academy. My brother Dave just started reading Strange Academy. But most of my circle, if they read comic books, it's mostly Image, Boom stuff. And if they jump into superheroes, it's usually like the big ones, like just like Superman, Spider-Man, that kind of thing. My wife is the only one that reads like the esoteric stuff that I hand her. But my daughter is reading Strange Academy, and I love Scotty Young. We were just talking about it, but I don't have anybody to talk to about it. And I caught her reading the other night, and I was like, dude, you got to go to bed. It's like Wednesday. You got school in the morning. And she holds up, and she's reading Strange Academy. And I'm like, I didn't see anything. You go ahead. Let's compare notes tomorrow. It's just like, it's how it goes. Threaten to microwave their books. I would never. I had to buy those dang books. They're expensive, man. Man, it is how it goes. But I love being a parent. It's so cool, and it's so inspiring, and I love being able to give them the stuff that I couldn't have, and I love being able to show them that you can be in the arts, because that was the thing where I grew up and how I grew up, that like it wasn't a possibility. Not only was it a possibility, I didn't even know that it was feasible as like an option. You know, like my dad was a professional chef for a long time, but when he died, he was working at Walmart. My mom worked at Walmart her entire time and was an accountant sometimes. And you like the jobs that I knew growing up was like you could be a logger, you know, like you could go cut trees, you could work at Walmart, or you could be a mechanic. That was like those were the career paths for you. But my kids see me writing comic books, and like I know the creators of some of their favorite comic books, and so like they can talk to them sometimes and write letters. And a lot of my friends online write comic books and draw comic books and or make music. I know a lot of creators who make TTRPGs, which is another thing that my kids and I love. And like they see that it's a possibility, and they see me working on it. So not only do they support the arts and understand that it is a job and worth it and important to our society, but they also see that it's a possibility, so they don't feel like they're stuck. So I hope my kids, unless they really want to, don't get stuck working in a corporate job like I did for 15 years that they don't like, that they know that there are options available to them. Hopefully that those options still exist and they can make a living, because that's something that's very difficult. But at least knowing that they could pursue it, that's the thing that I just didn't think was a possibility for me. So knowing that they get to do that is pretty cool. It's an empty threat. Sure, like most things as a parent, like you stop caring about bedtime. You really do. You really do stop caring. Like eventually, like they're smart kids, they're good kids, and they're healthy, right? So for the most point, I don't really push it too much. There is an occasion, you know, where I have insomnia and I deal with that in different ways. I don't want her to develop that because a lot of it is onset by my activities. It's not necessarily built into my brain. So, like, I don't want her to develop some of those bad habits. So, there is some push there. And sometimes it's like, I know that you're tired. I can see that you're drowsy. Go to sleep. You have to be up in 4 hours. You know, it's like, it's the extreme cases that I really get concerned about. What we have for bedtime is, like, we have, like, this quiet time period where it's like, hey, go brush your teeth, get pajamas on. We all ate dinner and hung out together. Go be quiet and have some alone time to reflect on the day by yourselves. That gives me and my wife some quiet time to chill. But you don't have to necessarily go to sleep. It's not like lights out at this time. It's like, hey, go and be calm for a little bit and get ready for bed kind of thing. And that period is indefinite. You know, like in between that and when you fall asleep, that's on you. But I do need you to at least chill so I can have some peace and quiet for myself as well. Yeah, if my mom grounded me, she had to take my books. If not, grounding me wouldn't work either. Exactly. Like, I because I have good kids and they don't really do too much stuff like that, they don't really get grounded. I don't have to take anything away from them very often. We don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. And that stuff didn't really work on me either as a kid. Mostly because I was poor and I played outside. Like, you gonna make me stay inside? Do you want me in there? Like, but, you know, it's just not a thing that I have to deal with. I sometimes split my table with my oldest. She does watercolor. Dude, isn't that the coolest thing? My daughter started writing and drawing her first comic. and like she'll ask me notes about it. She helps, like she goes, is this a good page turn, stuff like that. And then like my son loves making his own Pokemon cards, so like we'll be working at the kitchen table working on like different comic books and writing stuff, and my son is drawing Pokemon cards like that he sells to his friends sometimes. I try to get him just to give them away, but he is a little entrepreneur. So like it's a really good time, and my wife paints, so you know while we're doing that stuff, she's painting, and she does a lot of acrylic and some watercolors. But it's such a cool time working on art in my household with my family as they get older and want to do that, and I don't have to feel like I'm ignoring them. They're working on their own thing. Watercolor looks great in comics. I 1,000% agree. I love watercolors. I love all sorts of stuff in comics, but try to get him to not value his art I would never do that, Cliff. What happens often though is, you know, he has some, I would say, okay, let's say affluent schoolmates. My son, you know, we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. We do okay. But by comparison, they do very well. And some of those kids who don't understand the value of a dollar will give him a lot of money. And sometimes I get calls that he sold them a rare Charizard card, and it's, you know, it is a piece of cardboard that my son drew on, and I have to have those conversations. So a lot of the talks are like, hey man, you can't be doing this. My son is also just very charming, so he gets a lot of gifts from other kids. And that's another thing that I get calls about sometimes. Like, you know, he'll come home with other kids' actual Pokemon cards. And I'm like, you can't keep doing this. I can't keep having these conversations with these kids' parents. They're trying to buy your affection. And I appreciate that you're good at this. And you're going to do very well for yourself. But you have to give these kids things back and their money. Like, I don't need that smoke. Actually, Tyrannosaurus, I'm going to guilt you to give light feedback for my first arc, 5 issues. Definitely can. We've talked about your book before, dude. And I know, like, I gave you feedback on the Kickstarter. I'm happy to. Again, you know it takes me time to get back on stuff. So just don't, like, hold your breath if you need to get back to work while you're waiting for me, you know. But I will gladly give you feedback. But just like what I told Ty, and I know you know this because you've done issues before, is like, I can only give you so much feedback on an arc when so much of it comes down to what you're doing in the actual issue. I agree with Clint. They can't spend what their parents didn't give them. That's true. I've had to have that kind of conversation where I'm like, listen, I will definitely make sure that your kid gets his money back, but maybe you should teach your kid not to spend that much money at school. Maybe your kid shouldn't be holding a $100 bill. I don't know. They're 7. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. Why is that my issue to solve? But, you know, I still will gladly help out, you know, just in case my kid ever does that. He won't, but just in case. I often call the other kids in his class window lickers, because I've seen so many kids like lick the wall and stuff, and I'm like, dude, these are your friends? Like, they're such goobers. But he's got some really cool classmates, and I try to be on good terms with the parents, even though I'm not one of those parents who are like friends with the other parents. Like, a lot of my friends don't have kids. Like, I don't need to hang out with them too. But you want to be at least friendly, especially if you're in a small town. Like, my kids go to a small town school. I'm going to know these kids, a lot of them, for the, you know, the duration of them going to school. And you gotta play nice. You gotta be friendly, because you're gonna deal with these people for a long time. What I'm hearing is he is who to call if we want to create a trading card game. 1,000%. And I love trading cards, which is partly where he finds his love from that. And it's partly my fault because I've talked about the value of cards and how to take care of them and what some people do, like, buy and trade them for, you know what I mean? And so some of it is my fault, as he's learned the value of money very quickly. Dandy, thank you so much for the gifts, dude. You rock. Love the heart. And what is that? Is that a bowl? A sash? What is that? Thank you very much, man. But I can't see that emoji on my tiny screen with my old man eyes. Right, so you keep channeling from the affluent to you. Value is relative. It is something that I've talked about, right? When it comes to if you want to make money versus make art. um, you have to target different fan bases, right? My audience is mostly people who like comic books. That's the majority of people who purchase my comic books. That's not a great way to make money, right? If you want to like make money, if that's your goal is to just profit, you need to find a rich audience, and make stuff that rich people want. That's how you really make money. And he takes those lessons to heart, and he learns these things, and so I understand where it comes from. But I don't want to have to deal with that. It's a bracelet. Okay, thank you so much for explaining. Stop it. I'm old. I can't see. Your kid did that, and you tried squashing it. No, I didn't try squashing it. I told him to be more careful and to be reasonable and not to bleed his audience dry. That's why you can buy Hellion and Bash #2 for $5 in my add-ons and not $20, right? You have to make sure that you can have repeat business. Dandy, thank you so much for the heart. Right? Did I get that one right? I can see that one, I think. You're the best, man. You guys can laugh at me for being old and having old man eyes all you want. It's true. I can't pretend like it wasn't. Thank you for the lightning bolt, man. I don't know what any of these equate to, but you're the best, and I appreciate it no matter what. But, like, I can't see anything, but I will say I didn't have glasses until I started having kids. When my wife was pregnant with my first kid, that's when I got the diagnosis that I needed to start wearing glasses. So I had young man eyes for much longer than I ever thought I would. And then it just started to go downhill from there. I will say the last time it equates to guilt. Dude, it does equate to guilt. This is something that came on. I had a gifter last time I was watching, and I always feel bad because I can't reciprocate. I can't give anything back right now. The best I can do is read your emails when you send them with your comic books and give you the feedback that you're asking for. And pay you in goodwill because I love all of you and you're awesome, and thank you for keeping me company while I did this. But I want you to know that I really am one of those people. I do feel guilty when people give me money. It's like one of the hardest parts about having to make it in comic books. Like, you can't just like write a cool comic, which I think I do. You gotta chill. You gotta sell it. You gotta, get those sales. You gotta carnival bark at people. And I never wanted to be that guy, but it's part of the business. The other thing that I never wanted to do was like ask for something. That's just a thing I have a really hard time with. And it was kind of like taught to me that you weren't supposed to do that. And every gig I've ever gotten is because I've asked for it. And it's the only way to do it. And you get better at getting no's. I get a lot of no's. I get a lot of it like just ignoring me, a lot of apathy. But you have to. You have to put yourself out there and just start asking people for stuff. All I'm saying is you should encourage him to create cards of his own characters or your characters. Oh, he does do that, man. Sometimes my stuff, he's done some really cool covers for my books that I would love to sell at some point. Or even just show off. But he creates a lot of his own stuff. He's got his own universe. He's so creative. Both my kids are. I love them so much. My daughter's comic book is way more interesting than mine. I can't wait for everybody else to see it. Then he isn't using someone else's IP. Totally. And like that's the thing. My kids understand IP. They understand intellectual property in a way that I think most kids don't, because they've seen me deal with that stuff and create analogs of characters I don't own and things like that. We're all beggars on the street, aren't we? That's exactly it. Bug Boy, thank you so much for the roses, dude. You're the best. I was just talking about you. Did you hear it? Were you summoned? Were your ears ringing? I was talking about reading some of your stuff. I have some feedback to send you, man. Oh, you should find a publisher for a comic. Oh, I might publish it myself. I own a piece of Professional Entropy, the publisher for Hellion and Bash. That's something that I could, that use my nepotism powers. Here, I got in here, so you can. What very, very few nepotism powers I could offer, being nobody in comics. But you said it, I came. Exactly, man. You heard it. But as she works on stuff, it's also just like understanding that leg up of knowing the process of how to make a comic book. And like her stuff is good, and it's really fun to see her grow. Like when she first started making comic books, it was like, here's 2 panels, because she had seen some like web strips, and it was like, get down to that. And now she's talking about page turns and the next issue, and it's really cool to see her like grow and have really cool stuff. And hopefully by the time that she's like doing it seriously, if she does stick with it, hopefully she's just like killing it and is like way better than my stuff. And I think she would if she pursues it. But my favorite thing about any of it is that she just enjoys making art. And same thing with my son and his cards. Like they have a good time creating things, and that's magical, man. That's all I've ever wanted for my kids, is to be able to enjoy their lives, and they do that. I have my seventh grader brother create one. He created intergalactic street racer comic. Oh, that's so rad! That's really cool. You should talk to Lucky 33 about that. They have an intergalactic racing series that's really meta, and there's a lot of cool ideas in there. It's called Max Axel, if you've ever checked that out. But they've had some really cool collaborations with like racing games as well. But that's something to look into, and pick that up for your brother too. Nepotism is not always bad. No, totally, it's not always bad. And sometimes it's just the way that you can get a leg up. If I had any legs to stand on, I would definitely do that. If I knew more people who were higher up in professional organizations, I would always ask for that. I don't necessarily like frown upon that by any means. I was just making jokes because I don't really. There's no nepotism powers there for me. I don't have access to anything like that to give my kids, but I will teach them all the stuff I know. But yeah, definitely pick up Max Axel for your little brother. Yeah, please go check out Lucky 33 Comics, especially like if you got kid siblings or other kids in your family. Like, it is one of the few family friendly indie comic books that I recommend to everybody. All ages, all good stuff, no bad language. Again, like, one of the rules in the universe is nobody dies, and if they do die, it's hammy and make sure like it's safe and they all come back, right? Like, that's one of the rules. So Lucky 33 is great. Bug Boy knows. So I highly recommend that to anybody with kids or kid siblings or kids in their lives. Lucky 33 Comics is rad. They are goated. It's 10 out of 15. 10 to 15 for youngsters, right? It's all good stuff, and also it's not just for youngsters, right? Like, I also enjoy their comics immensely, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write for them so bad, is because I'm like, this is good, right? We see a lot of indie stuff that like needs some work, right? And they kind of showed up fully formed, and it was a lot of fun to read. And there's a lot of nuance in their like lore. Like I said, they take their lore very seriously. So like when you read Max Axel, that matters to their universe. And they're working on another Max Axel comic. So if you enjoy it, if your little brother ends up enjoying it, there's more Max Axel on the way. And they've had some really cool tie-ins with some indie racing games. So if you enjoy Max Axel, you can play as some Max Axel characters in some racing games. It's kind of escaping me right now which racing game it was in, but easily Googleable. They're literally always working on new projects. 1,000%. Like I said, like they bought a script for me like a long time ago. And it's like, one day you're gonna see that pop up because they always got so much going on. Astronaut High Schooler was good too. Oh, Astronaut High Schooler was rad, and very video game oriented too. And that was done by their main artist. He had done like a solo book, and they partnered with them, and now it matters to their universe, which is really really cool. But yeah, I love those dudes, and they're always super supportive. And like, for them, Lucky 33 Comics is so much just about fun. Like, if a project's not fun, they don't do it. They don't do it as like full career stuff. So every piece that they put into that universe is just pure love and joy, and they do it because they love it, which is so cool. And that's like most comic book creators. Like I said, we're not in it for the money. There's no money to be had, but and I do it because I love it, because that's what I want to do. But it is my career, right? It is what I do for a living. I want to continue to do it for a living. So a lot of what I do is building a resume, and I'm reaching out and I'm trying to work for companies. Lucky 33 is so magical because they just do it for themselves. They just do it for the love of the game, and that's what they want out of it too. So everything they do is just pure love and joy and fun. And there, you can't really say that for most comic books. And because they make it for children as well, like it is just meant to be fun and family oriented, you can recommend it to anybody. And also, they have free stuff too. Like, if you look at Webtoon, they have two series up on Webtoon. One of them is my daughter's favorite. It's Bubble Pop and the Wonder Witches, and then Thieves in the Nest. So they have two free comics as well, if you go and check that out. I should bring up some of their stuff. I should do a live check-in for my Kickstarter as well. Let's see what that's sitting at. And I know everyone here has seen it. They've heard me talk about it. I don't need to shill to you guys. But please share it out. Tell a friend if you know anybody who likes comic books. If you're at a comic book shop, tell them about Hellion and Bash. It's super helpful. If you ever meet any pros, let them know about me. Most of what I got on here to do wasn't to influence or make money. It's just to network and meet more people and to meet more creators and to, find an audience, but also make friends and network with people. Because that's what I'm trying to do with this. So even if you can't buy it again or whatever, please tell people about it. That's my main goal when it comes to getting on here and talking about Kickstarter. There we go. All right, what are we sitting at here? Let's refresh it. We're sitting at $1,147 out of a $3,000 goal with 37 backers and 27 days to go. God, that's awesome. I love seeing those numbers. Okie dokie, I've been awake for far too long. I gotta skedaddle. I'll forward you those issues. Thanks, man. No rush. You enjoy the read, man. Will do. Have a good one, man. Get some sleep. I'm the opposite. My comic is for no one, yet still people want a sequel. I love that. I love the idea that you're like, no, I'm not making this for anybody. For me, it's like, I want people to enjoy it. My first audience is always me. I make a comic book because I like the idea and I want to make this comic book. Every comic book I make is a comic book I'd want to read. That's how I do every single comic book. I still keep in mind which audience it's for, who I'm writing for is still important to me. I wish I could just do it purely for the art form. And I'm just not that guy. Like, I want to work in comic books. I want to be making them for other publishers. But I'm still an artist, right? Like, I'm still a writer. I still make the best piece of artwork I could possibly do. But, like, making a superhero comic was incredibly intentional. I wanted to tell a certain type of story for a certain type of audience. So that's what I aimed for. Those are the people that I want to buy it, and I want them to read. And I also did it to show off that I could write a superhero comic, right? I try to look at it like almost like chess, right? Like everything can have multiple, reasons behind it. Every move is more like doing 4 moves. So like working on Lucky 33 comics was because it would be fun and I get to work with them and they're my friends and I loved working with Alex on it and I wanted to write with him and I wanted to write a book for Lucky 33. But I also wanted to show off that I wasn't just one note and I could write something that was pure fun and joy. And also I wanted something that my daughter could read. So everything I do, I try to do on multiple levels like that if I can. Also, I have to be a little bit more careful just because a lot of the books I make cost a lot of money, right? They cost a lot of money to work in comic books. It's a big pay to play. I have to pay for the book to get created. I have to pay artists, letterers, editors. Even working with a publisher, still some stuff comes out of my pocket, at least up front. Then you got to pay for it to be printed and shipped and tabling at cons and all of that stuff. So I try to be intentional with my movements because I want to keep doing this as long as possible without going broke. Because like all the stuff I've talked about, my kids, man, I love them. And my first duty is to them. And that means making sure I don't blow all my money on a dream like making comic books. Max Axel looks cool. Oh, heck yeah, man. I hope you pick up a copy, give it to your little brother, and enjoy it. And tell Lucky 33 that I recommended you, so they feel guilty and publish the comic book I wrote for them. That's the only goal. Oh, man. But I should get back to work, other work. But I thanks for hanging out with me. Check out Hellion and Bash issue number 2. If you were here, if you saw this, tell a friend. Anything, Hellion and Bash. And don't worry, I know it says issue number 2. You can pick up issue number 1 on that same Kickstarter and catch up. We got digital and physical tiers. Tell a friend, tell your neighbor, tell that weird dude that hangs out at the comic book shop to pick up Hellion and Bash. Again, thanks for hanging out with me. My name's T.S. and I write comics. I'll talk to everybody later.